Hello. Uh, I'd like to speak on a subject I just watched a video about Spark. It's not a new subject. It's an old subject of mine, and I kind of touch on it with all my videos, uh, basically. And the subject is basically that complacency can be very dangerous. Can be extremely dangerous. Uh, you know, the frog in the boiling water is the ultimate complacency problem. You think you're fine until you're not. And when you find out you're not, it's too late. And I think we see this with the president. We see this with crypto. We see this with the internet. We see this with social media. We see this with the phones we all have in our pocket and pay extraordinary amounts of money to have. I remember when a $30 phone bill was like, how dare you? How dare you charge me $30 for a phone bill? Now they're getting 200. So it's just everything goes up slowly. And so you know what I'm talking about talk. And that's the complacency. It goes up slowly. It's like the boiling water, it starts out warm and everything feels cozy, like, oh, this is a good spot to hang out. And then all of a sudden it's boiling and you're dead. So it's like $30, $100, $200, you know, and your salary and the way you make money doesn't go up like that. If anything, it goes in reverse. So, and it becomes now like with the phone, it's you can't live without a phone. You can't pay for parking without a phone. You can't go to the supermarket without a phone. You can't. It's very hard. There's no pay phones. So if you want to make a phone call, you have to ask somebody to use their cell phone. Pretty much. So, and that was complacent too. It's like, yeah, we had pay phones and we had cell phones, and gradually but slowly they got rid of the pay phones. And you, you saw the booth or the little spot where the phone used to be, and then you looked at that spot and there was no phone there anymore. They took the phone out. The spot said and the phone sign was there, but there was no phone. It was a slow and gradual elimination. And of course they wrote it off as too expensive to maintain. You couldn't send people out to collect change that wasn't there. Nobody was using them and stuff like that. But they did serve an emergency purpose. They worked in a storm. When your cell phone cut out because of a hurricane, the payphone would work. You know, so I mean, I would think they did. They used to work. I don't know if they work anymore, but and that's just one little thing. Currency, cryptic. Currency was weird because back in the day, people would make money off of currency. They would buy dollars, or they would buy euros, or they would buy Deutsches, or whatever. And one would go up, and they would sell when it went up, or they would buy more when it went down, and try to manipulate the currency market. There was money to be made there. Because things went up, things went down. And if you were on the right side of the up and the down, you could make money, and that was like complacent, that was normal course of business. Anybody in the stock market would have an eye on the currency market because it's tied to everything else. But now with crypto, it kind of threw a wrench into the system, a stick in the wheel because it changed everything. I mean, it was no longer going up 10 cents or 20 cents or a percentage point. It's going up 20,000 or 10,000 you know, thousands every day going up and down, and people were making money on it. And the funny thing is, Deutsches and euros and dollars you can spend. I can go to the corner and spend $1. Um, I can have euros in my bank, transfer it into dollars, and I can buy something at 7-Eleven. It's not impossible. Depends on your bank, I would think. Uh, but it's possible. But with Bitcoins, it's not. You can't go to the store and buy a pack of cigarettes with a Bitcoin. They talk about stories where you can, and certain places are now trying to capture the Bitcoin market and accepting Bitcoins. But it's a gray area, and that's the complacency because they're saying it's a currency, but it's unusable, and the value is arbitrary, and nobody see biggest, like a Ponzi scheme, any Ponzi scheme. It's very hard to explain to somebody that doesn't know what's going on. Like Madoff and his scheme was a Ponzi scheme, and nobody knew what he was doing until they found out. And even then, it was kind of like, well, they don't know what happened to the 50 billion that he stole. They couldn't find it. Most of it wasn't found. So what I'm saying is Ponzi schemes are very complicated, very intricate to find the guy at the top running the whole thing. There's a lot of guys underneath that have their money invested and don't want to lose anything, and they're afraid of blowing it up because they're going to lose everything if they do. So they protect the upper guys. And it becomes very complicated. And that's what Bitcoin is. Try to figure out what a Bitcoin is, or the value of a Bitcoin, or where Bitcoin comes from. It's very complicated. It's very intricate, and you cannot trust those kinds of systems. They're ripe for scams. They're ripe for mismanagement, like Bankman Fried. I don't know, Blake Bankman Fried, or whatever. I don't even give a shit about him. But yeah, he was going to be the first trillionaire. He was on the road to be the first trillionaire with his little exchange that he had going on there. And I already said my piece about that. I think Trump set him up. But and now Trump's trying to be the first trillionaire because that's Trump's biggest dream to be the first trillionaire. Uh, that's why he was best friends with Musk because Musk is in line to be the first trillionaire, I would think. I don't know. Probably there's other people that we don't know. Because there are a lot of billionaires you don't even know their name, and you might never know their name. Especially the deep state, the puppets, the puppeteers, the ones in the black suits at the puppet show, the ones that are running the whole puppet show. You won't know their names, just like you don't know them at the puppet show. They don't tell you their names, and uh, and they got a lot of money. They got a lot of money. And I tell you, when you have money like that, money becomes redundant. It's just, who cares? 1 billion, 2 billion, who cares? Musk doesn't really care about $1 billion. He spent 44 billion on Twitter and then destroyed it. And then remade it and renamed it. It's just, uh, it's a lot to do with trust. You know, when you're complacent, it shows you trust. You know, when when you're complacent with your wife and your family life and your job, it shows you're trusting. You're trusting your job, you're trusting your boss, you're trusting your wife, you trust your kids. And usually in those situations, the kids are the last ones you trust because you know how much trouble they can get in. But you know what I mean. So, it's just, and when you do that, when you're complacent, you're not growing, you're not expanding, you're not um, becoming a better person. You get in a loop. I go to work or go to school or I go to bed at night. I eat certain meals during the week. Um, eat the same meals all the time. Um, it becomes a very big loop. And I shop at the same stores, Amazon, Macy's, or whatever. But it gets redundant, it's just very boring after a while. Um, and it's hard to change that, you know. Uh, if you think of moving to a new city, well, there's going to be a Macy's there, Amazon's there, food is there, depending on the city, and the TV shows you watch will be there. What have you really moved? What have you really changed? Your address? The same as the old address, it's just the number changes, the street name changes. Big deal. Uh, you are wherever you go, and that's how you know fake people from real people. Because wherever they go, they're always the same. They're real. And if they're fake, they change when they go. Like if you go to a dinner with a person and you're like, oh, very sociable, um, very outgoing and stuff. And when they go home, they're very abusive, but they're very quiet. You can tell they put on a show. They put on a mask when they went to this show. And complacency is tough, because we want to be comfortable. We want to trust our job. We want to trust our wife. We want to trust our kids. But it's just, like I said, the water's warm, and then all of a sudden it turns to boil, and it's like, bam, it's over in an instant. Because when it changes very quickly. And, because you're in the water and you're used to the warm water, you don't notice the subtle changes to go to boil. You think, it's getting a little hot, but, it's like when you're in a hot tub and it starts to get cold. It gets cold gradually, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is really cold. It's like, I gotta get out of here. You know, but it's the opposite when I'm talking about with boiling. You're sitting there all of a sudden, and you can't get out. And the frog can't get out of the boiling water because his muscles are atrophied, and the heat has affected him, so he can't jump out like he could before. And that's the problem. And like I said, when you have a wife and a job, uh, you you become accustomed to what's going on, and it's very hard to change that. We're creatures of habit. We always have been. And, I think that's why Trump has Melania, Epstein, and Putin, and the Israelis put Melania in his life, and she's a dominatrix, and she's there to get him used to the abuse that these other countries are doing to him and to our country. I'm sure she tells him a lot more what to do than we all want to believe. And uh, and even with Epstein, with them pushing the Epstein file, it's like we're getting lulled into a place of complacency. Like this is okay. Like it's okay to rape children. It's okay to eat children. And it's not. It never will be. But they want you to be like, I heard that before. No shock, no riot in the streets. It's complacency into where you allow it to happen. It's like the Germans with the Nazis and if you want to believe there was a Holocaust, you know, they were they didn't care about what was going on across the street. They went to work and that's all they wanted to do. And when they came to get their neighbors, they were just happy it wasn't them. And the neighbors had to have done something wrong, otherwise they wouldn't have came for them. You know, so and when the cops come to your neighbor's house, you're like, what did they do? Not like What are they trying to cover up? What are they trying to hide? And it's what did they do? Like they're guilty just because the cops came to the door. They're guilty, guilty, guilty before they even get handcuffs on them. They're guilty. And it's not true. Yesterday alone, uh, today is the 28th, so the 27th of April, there was a man that had spent 25 years in jail for a murder he did not commit, and his conviction was overturned and vacated, and the person that hired someone to kill this person said he didn't hire this person that spent 25 years in jail. So it took a long time for the truth to come out. But the truth always comes out. And, he's free now. But I'm sure he didn't expect it. Uh, I'm sure he hoped for it the whole time he was in there. But you kind of lose hope after a while. And I think it was a big surprise to him. And, you know, you hear the story though, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. And nothing happens. Like they lie to you in jail all the time. The lawyers lie to you. Everybody lies to you. And so it's very hard to decipher what's real and what's fake. But, and I would say the one difference between like the Central Park Five and Rex, the Gilgo Beach killer, is Rex pled guilty. He pled guilty. He said he did it. Central Park Five never said they did it. They always maintain their innocence. And I mean, like I said, I don't know that Rex did it because he said he's guilty. That people that are innocent say they're guilty a lot of times, and more than you want to know. So it doesn't mean that because he said he's guilty or he pled guilty that he's guilty. But the Central Park Five never said they were guilty, and they got exonerated. And you have that. So don't don't take everything as what it says. Read between the lines. The headlines in the newspapers, they speak to me. If you read just the headline, and you can go to the pages in the back, like usually the sports section is ripe with messages, and I consider the messages from the universe of the barometer of the day, what's going on, and stuff like that. And I haven't gone and taken pictures of the newspaper in a few days, and I really don't care. If you want to do it, you can do it. And but I'm trying to teach you how to read the newspaper and understand that there's a hidden meaning. There's a hidden meaning behind the newspaper and the headlines. So, not always, but majority of the time. So, complacency. It's dangerous. Don't get complacent. Look for change. Do something different. Take a new way home. Eat something different. Go on vacation. Take your wife to a hotel room, not a motel room, a hotel room, and have a good night. Do something different. You know, go out to dinner. Uh, Buy something that you wouldn't normally buy for yourself. Treat yourself. You work hard every day. Treat yourself. Do things different. You don't have to move your house. You don't have to divorce your wife or change your job. Just do things different, and you'll see the world in a different way.